Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there's a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's start off talking about Nikki Cross. Now, Nikki Cross, the superhero gimmick, we spoke about it at length yesterday, but we have more details about it today. Not that it's changed my opinion at all. I know it's changed quite a few people's opinions on social media, which I do want to talk about because I think the hypocrisy involved in all that is staggering. Now, obviously, Nikki Cross debuted this new superhero gimmick. You can see it on the screen right now, and it was met with quite a lot of criticism on social media, with a lot of people blaming WWE, creative, Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, etc. I did that yesterday, but we have some new details about it, because Nikki Cross apparently came up with her new superhero gimmick that we saw on Raw this week. Now, as noted, Cross debuted the new look on Raw before reuniting with Alexa Bliss to defeat Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler in a Money in the Bank qualifying match. Now, she cut a pre-match promo about feeling a spark inside of her as of late following her recent victories over Charlotte Flair and Raw Women's Champion Rhea Ripley on Monday Night Raw, and how she thought of a way to display the spark in her heart and how to represent for everyone and their shortcomings. She went on to say that this new look embodies everything that we all have inside of us, that being spirit. Now, in an update, Nikki Cross's husband, WWE superstar Killian Dane, took to social media after Raw and indicated that she came up with a new character on her own. This is what Killian Dane had to say, quote, "She had an idea and she brought it to life. Very excited to see what's next. Go, go, Nikki." Now, Cross spoke with Zara Schreiber for the post-Raw interview and said, quote, "So we've talked about the last few weeks. There's been this power growing inside of me, this spark that's just been developing and evolving. It's a metamorphosis. It's this spirit inside of me. I'm going to ride this spirit. I'm going to ride this momentum, ride this wave to Money in the Bank." Now, also, it must be said that a graphic designer by the name of Rob Downey posted on social media, and it was highlighted again, once again, by Killian Dane, by Nikki Cross's husband, about the first concept about this Nikki Cross new character. So Rob Downey tweeted, quote, "I'm so glad I can talk about this now. I helped Nikki Cross pitch this idea a few months back. I'm so happy to see it brought to life." So the story now goes that this was Nikki Cross's idea, and this is Nikki Cross's creation. Nikki Cross was the one that pitched this to WWE. Nikki Cross is the one that pitched this to Vince McMahon, to Bruce Pritchard. It was Nikki Cross's idea. Don't blame Vince McMahon. Don't blame Bruce Pritchard, etc. Okay, if it wasn't Bruce Pritchard's idea, if it wasn't Vince McMahon's idea, then I take back the criticism yesterday about saying this was a 1985 character from their point of view. It doesn't change my opinion, though, that I think it's a bad gimmick. It doesn't. I think I suppose I'm not surprised. I say this every day when we talk about news here on the channel. We talk about social media and reactions to things on social media, but it is humorous that you had these comments yesterday and Monday talking about the Nikki Cross character, saying, terrible gimmick, terrible creative, terrible Bruce Pritchard, terrible Vince McMahon, dumb gimmick, all this kind of stuff. And then they go, Nikki Cross came up with it, and they'll go, it's not that stupid, maybe it has a chance of getting over. And it goes to show that maybe the bias there isn't towards actually the gimmick. The bias there is towards Vince McMahon or Bruce Pritchard. The bias there is towards the company, right? The company, they're holding people down. They're burying Nikki Cross. A bad idea is a bad idea, irrespective of who came up with it. I like Nikki Cross. I think she should be featured on Raw more often. And despite, again, the creative surrounding her recent victories on Raw, which I didn't understand because I don't see how that's benefited Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, or the Raw Women's Championship match at Hell in a Cell. Bear in mind, Nikki Cross owns 2 victories over both Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, and that had nothing to do with the Hell in a Cell match, the pay-per-view, right? Nikki Cross wasn't involved in any of that. She just beat the champion and the challenger. No reason why, I don't know, to transition into a superhero gimmick. That's dumb. And the gimmick itself, again, I think it's a bad gimmick. It's a stupid gimmick. When I saw that on Monday Night Raw this week, I rolled my eyes, irrespective of if Vince McMahon came up with it, Bruce Pritchard, Nikki Cross, whoever, Paul Heyman, any creative genius throughout history, Eric Bischoff, you name it, Tony Khan. If this happened in AEW, it would still be a stupid gimmick. Now, what's also weird about this gimmick is sort of the weird justification that people have been trying to do with it. because I've seen people try and spin it in many different ways as to why this isn't a bad idea. Well, you know, this could work. Nikki could get it over. Maybe she could. Maybe it is so bad that it will get over. I just don't see that happening. I see that gimmick on the screen right there, and I look at it and I go, it's the female Shorty G. You know, it's all about not giving up, persevering, and being a real-life superhero. Ricochet did it. I'm going to be a real-life superhero. I'm proving to you that superheroes really exist and we can overcome everything. Ricochet lost in like 8 seconds to Brock Lesnar. Superheroes don't exist and they can't overcome anything. And then they go back to main event and they disappear for a while. And now they wrestle in jeans, apparently. So again, that whole stuff is ridiculous. I think I've seen people comparing it to the Hurricane and Mighty Molly. And people are going, well, you love the Hurricane and you love Mighty Molly. Why don't you love this? There is a real difference in presentation about the Hurricane and Mighty Molly and this Nikki Cross superhero gimmick. Yes, they're both superheroes. But that's realistically, that's where the comparisons end. The Hurricane and Mighty Molly, again, people they look at these things completely out of context. They'll look at that and they go, that's a superhero gimmick. Why can't Nikki Cross thrive? Because the Hurricane and Mighty Molly was completely played for comedy. The Hurricane was a gimmick that when Shane Helms came over to the WWE from WCW, they saw he had a Green Lantern tattoo on his arm and they said, what's that? And he goes, I like comic books. I like superheroes. So he became a superhero. And it was a comedic gimmick that eventually over time, at different points of time, they tried to take it seriously. But ultimately, it's still a guy dressing up as a superhero. So people didn't take it seriously. It was a comedy gimmick. You had Rosie become the superhero in training. Look at the acronym. And then eventually he became a superhero. Mighty Molly was the Hurricane's sidekick. Because again, it was a comedic gimmick. It was all about comedy. It was played up for comedy. Now, obviously, comedic characters can get over. Comedic characters, if they are funny, they can get attached to the audience. And maybe that might be the direction that Nikki Cross goes in. The issue is, if you're looking at the promo she cut on Monday, if you're looking at the promo she cut on the network, if you're looking at the promo she cut on Raw Talk, it's not been played for comedy at all. That segment there where she revealed this costume to the WWE Universe was not played for comedy. It was played as a white meat babyface, believe in yourself, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, essentially that. It was 1985 booking. It was believe in yourself. And I felt this spark inside of me and I believe myself. So I'm going to dress up as a superhero. That wasn't played for comedy. That was played as being serious. I'm on this momentum, so I'm going to wear a mask and a superhero's outfit and a cape. That's what that was played for. It wasn't played in the same vein as the Hurricane. It wasn't played in the same vein as Mighty Molly. Now, if they pivot to it being a comedic gimmick, which I think eventually it will, because you can't take that gimmick seriously. You can't. What, are you going to have, Nikki Cross dressed up like that going up against Rhea Ripley or Charlotte Flair? We just had Hell in a Cell this past weekend. Can you see that gimmick inside Hell in a Cell? Being believe in yourself, say your prayers, all that kind of stuff. Again, we're returning to touring in July. We're returning to a live audience. And I get it, and I know that ultimately, and maybe this is where people could, I understand this point here, that maybe this gimmick, it's not for me. It's not for me. It's not aimed at people like me. It's not aimed at maybe the more mature elements of the WWE audience. WWE likes to say how broad their audience is. We cater to all demographics and all age groups. Obviously, that gimmick is not for me. That gimmick is not for people my age. Certainly, again, the more older, mature audience. That gimmick is tailored towards the kids of like 10 years old and younger. That's who it's aimed towards. It's aimed towards them, and it's aimed towards people that make action figures, because people that make action figures are looking at that Nikki Cross gimmick and going, that is money. WWE looking at that going, that is money. Action figures, you name it. We can make a ton of money off that. And I'm sure there are kids in the WWE audience. It's a PG audience, and there's loads of kids that will go to these shows coming up in July, and they'll love the Nikki Cross gimmick because they're 10 years old. The issue is there is a big part of the audience, arguably the most vocal part of the audience, certainly the part of the audience that is going to be booing inside the arenas, are that more older, mature audience. Yes, you're going to have the kids there and you're going to have the parents there with their kids. But ultimately, that more mature audience is the voice that drowns out those kids inside of the arenas. That is the voice that you could hear when John Cena got the mixed reception. And it will be the same with the Nikki Cross character. The fortunate thing she has is that people like Nikki Cross. But irrespective of if she came up with a gimmick, if Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, or whoever came up with a gimmick, it's a bad gimmick. It's a bad story. Now, there's ways to make it work. As I mentioned, if they played it for comedy, I would say, I'll give it a chance. If they went really deep with it, which is how I would like to see my characters, certainly in 2021 in the world of pro wrestling, I like my characters to have nuances. I like them to have layers. I like them to have a backstory. I like them to have different, different psyches, different personas. If they'd have played this as Nikki Cross, she sees her own tag team partner, her old tag team partner, Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss, she's got a fractured psyche. She's got this sort of playful side, but ultimately she's a dark, evil character. She's got this evil side of her, and she's doing all this supernatural crap that no one likes. But she sees all that, and she goes, I can't believe it. Maybe because of my past insanity, maybe because of my craziness, maybe I rubbed off on her. Somehow she feels slightly responsible. You got to remember, when Alexa Bliss started to go through all this transformation with the Fiend and all this kind of stuff, Nikki Cross was her tag team partner. Maybe Nikki Cross looks at Alexa Bliss and goes, I could have stopped that. I could have prevented that. And I'm living with that guilt. And that guilt isn't going to go away until I fix things, until I try and right the wrongs that Alexa Bliss is doing. Maybe if I team up with her and I'm a beacon of hope and I can really try and fix the wrongs that she has done, maybe I can feel better about myself. Maybe I can finally rest. Maybe all of this craziness in my head will stop. That's a compelling storyline. That's got layers. That's got depth. That's something to explore. That's a character with layers. It's not a character standing in gorilla saying, I felt a spark inside of me, so I decided to put a mask on. That's the situation with it. Again, I like Nikki Cross. I'm glad she's on Raw, but irrespective of if she came up with the gimmick or not, it's not for me. And maybe that's the thing. It's not meant for me. It's meant for the kids. It's meant for the action figures. But I find it funny that people are stepping back going, well, actually, no, I do like the gimmick because she came up with it. Come on, have an opinion. Stick to it, I don't know. Brock Lesnar. We've spoken a lot about Brock Lesnar recently, haven't we? There's been lots of rumors about his upcoming possible return to WWE. Well, reportedly, there are no plans for Brock Lesnar to return as of right now. Now, there have been a lot of conflicting reports recently on the future of Lesnar, especially as we get closer to the return of touring and SummerSlam on the horizon. But word as of right now, via multiple reports, is that WWE has nothing planned for Lesnar to return anytime soon. Now, it was noted by Dave Meltzer during the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer radio show that as of Monday afternoon, there was nothing planned for Brock Lesnar in WWE. Now, it's further been reported that Lesnar's name was not on the list of proposed names for an upcoming WWE draft when Lesnar's name came in conversation. It was also noted that the general idea is that WWE would have Lesnar return imminently if they had their way. Again, this is something that people have been speaking about a lot, isn't it? That WWE have wanted Brock Lesnar back for a while, irrespective of the return to touring or SummerSlam. It just felt a bit more that his contract was more financially viable. Now that obviously you're making money by running arenas, making money by selling tickets, and Lesnar's very good at selling tickets, but Lesnar's very good at selling out arenas. Given that added pressure of actually having to fill up arenas and stadiums, obviously in August, people thought Lesnar would be coming back, and there have always been quite a few conflicting reports when it comes to Lesnar anyway. Lesnar will come back eventually. It's just a case of when, and people can't figure that out at the moment, and I think that's probably frustrating people. I think that, again, given touring is on the horizon, given that SummerSlam is on the horizon, I think people have been being a bit creative with maybe some of their stories and saying, well, it's most likely, if he was going to return, it would be soon and all this kind of stuff. That everyone wants to be first. Everyone wants to be first. Everyone wants to be first to report any of these stories. And I guess that's what it is with Brock Lesnar. You could argue that maybe, and again, I don't want to sound like someone that's wearing a tinfoil hat, but maybe some reports are coming out saying that they're talking to Lesnar. WWE are like, whoa, we don't want people to know we're talking because we want his return to be a surprise. We've already got Edge's return, John Cena's return, all these other returns of leaking out. Can we at least save one? Can we at least save one return to be a surprise, either for the July episode of SmackDown or SummerSlam in August? Can we at least save one to be a surprise? So maybe they're throwing out information there saying, well, actually, nothing's confirmed. We're not even talking to him, and next thing you know, he shows up. Time will only tell with Brock Lesnar. The one thing that we can almost confirm is that he will return. He will return because it's Brock Lesnar and WWE. There's too much money on the table to be made by both parties. Now, Damien Priest has been a notable person that's been absent from WWE television over the course of the last few weeks, but he could be back in the ring as early as next week on Monday Night Raw. Now, Priest has not wrestled since defeating John Morrison in a lumberjack match on the May 17 edition of Monday Night Raw. Of course, that was one night after the zombie lumberjack match with The Miz at WrestleMania Backlash. Now, in an update, Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, be sure to check that out, is reporting that rumors of a back injury keeping Priest away from the ring right now have been denied, and that Priest will be available as soon as next week if WWE has any creative plans for him. Priest was reportedly unavailable for the past few weeks due to other reasons that were not disclosed. It was also said that he has been healing up, but a back injury has been denied. Now, WWE officials were hopeful at one point that Priest would be involved in the qualifying matches for Money in the Bank. Last night's edition of Raw saw Morrison, Ricochet, Riddle, and qualify for the first 3 Raw shots in the men's ladder match. Next week's Raw will feature a second chance triple threat qualifying match. So many words for the final Raw spot with Randy Orton and Raw Tag Team Champion AJ Styles and Drew McIntyre facing off. There should be 4 SmackDown qualifiers on Friday to fill the final 4 of the 8-man match. Now, there was pre-WrestleMania 37 reports that Damian Priest was dealing with a back injury of sorts. The injury was so severe that at one point it was rumored that it was going to be Bad Bunny versus The Miz. It was even advertised that was going to be the match in a singles match. Priest and Morrison both ended up overcoming injuries to work WrestleMania in a tag team match that saw Bad Bunny and Priest get the victory over Morrison and The Miz. Now, I know a lot of people have been speaking, haven't they, the last few weeks, going, where is Damian Priest? What is going on with Damian Priest? Is there no creative? Have WWE fallen out of love in terms of his character? All this kind of stuff. Is he injured? Fightful there are basically saying that he's not injured. He may have been healing up from that back injury that he had at WrestleMania, because again, that was touch and go. I mean, when was the tag team match made official? 2 weeks before Mania, something like that. So it was very touch and go, and obviously he was working through, the pain barrier, and maybe WWE realizes, again, with the return to touring coming up, and I know it's something we bring up in every single conversation right now, but it is the forefront of every single topic. With the return of touring, you don't want to be going into that with little niggles. You don't want to be going into that with little injuries that are going to exacerbate into something else. If he's struggling to work the schedule of the Thunderdome, let alone 5 nights a week, then that says a lot. So maybe they just say, look, these Thunderdome shows at the moment, they don't matter. They really don't matter. Take some time off, heal up the back injury. Creatively, we don't have a lot for you anyway. They're saying also undisclosed reasons. So, I don't know. Time will only tell. He'll be back on Monday, hopefully. And if he is, it's a shame he won't be involved in the Money in the Bank ladder match. I would have liked to have seen him been involved in that. But then I guess, ultimately, if he's got a back injury, why have him in there if he's not going to win the match? So I think he would have been a great contender to win it. And he certainly would have been someone I think people would have been discussing as to win it. I think McIntyre at the moment is going to win that match. But, who knows? Who knows? But it looks like he is going to be back next week. Now, NXT last night saw the reveal of the Diamond Mine. The Diamond Mine debuted on NXT with a returning superstar. You can see him there, Roderick Strong, because the Diamond Mine is now open for business in WWE NXT. Now, after weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of a mystery MMA-themed vignette on NXT television, the Diamond Mine debuted at the end of this week's NXT broadcast. The group includes Roderick Strong, Tyler Rust, Hideki Suzuki, and Malcolm Bivens as their manager. Now, last night's main event of NXT saw Kyle O'Reilly defeat NXT Cruiserweight Champion Kushida in a non-title match. Now, after the match, Adam Cole attempted to attack, but O'Reilly brawled with him to the outside, to ringside, to build to their Great American Bash on July 6th. A man then attacked Kushida in the ring and beat him down, revealed to be none other than the returning Roderick Strong. Strong dominated Kushida as Rust and Suzuki watched from the apron. Strong, Rust, and Suzuki then stood together over Kushida as Malcolm Bivens brought the NXT Cruiserweight Championship into the ring, showing it to Strong and then laying it over Kushida. Bivens then introduced the Diamond Mine as fans booed him. NXT went off the air with Bivens, Strong, Rust, and Suzuki standing tall together. Now, this is certainly interesting because a lot of people had predicted that maybe the Diamond Mine might have something to do with Roderick Strong. Of course, a lot of people thought, myself included, that Roderick Strong was going to be involved in that recharging of the battery vignette that we saw last week as well. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. It certainly is going to be interesting because for me, again, the Roderick Strong sort of departure thing was always with the intention to bring him back with a different gimmick, right? And they've essentially brought everyone back with different gimmicks at this point. The Undisputed Era are firmly... right, they're firmly doing their own thing at this point. Kyle O'Reilly's openly said it. I'm doing a singles thing now, when he said it to Bobby Fish. And Adam Cole's being Adam Cole. And Bobby Fish came back for a second. And then I guess was going to feud with Pete Dunne. Have we seen him really since? I don't even know if we have. I think that's interesting to see. But everyone's now in their separate gimmicks. They're doing their own thing. Now, Fightful Select has a ton of information about this, which is really interesting. Now, When it comes to news on this Diamond Mine stable, they said, quote, the Diamond Mine made their long-awaited debut on NXT, which Fightful have been told is part of the bigger interest or bigger part of NXT's plans to increase focus on their cruiserweight division throughout the summer. Now, Fightful has learned that the Diamond Mine has been planned for months, even well before Roderick Strong quit in storyline on NXT television, which again shows you how long this has been planned for. There were actually plans to debut the stable well before this, but it was moved back on more than one occasion for it to take center stage on an episode of NXT. Now, Fightful has reiterated as well that at no point during any parts of the planning were there plans to involve Tessa Blanchard or Parker Boudreaux, which were purely fueled by fan speculation. Fightful have been heard that other members have been discussed, however. Now, who will those other members be? I suppose Roderick Strong's wife, Marina Shafir, is probably the name that a lot of people are talking about. Other names that I would like to see, time will tell. Like I said before, there are plenty of guys at that Performance Center and females. I would like to see some female names in there as well. It's a shame that Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir, Jessamine Duke obviously has been released by the company. I think she's still doing work with Up, Up, Down, Down. That's what she was doing anyway. But Marina Shafir, I think, is perfect for that. I would like to see some more female names in there, especially considering NXT has its own women's tag team division. So to have a Diamond Mines, tag team on the male side of things and on the female side of things, and a singles competitor in Roderick Strong, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, again, speaking of this focus onto the cruiserweight division, Fightful also repeated a report prior to this yesterday. They said, quote, in speaking with many in NXT and the Performance Center, there has been a long working plan for NXT to emphasize the cruiserweight division and the title more on their programming. NXT officials have been high on Kushida ever since he came in as the main roster around him. As has the roster around him. We saw it start with Kyle O'Reilly, but we're told to expect NXT to integrate more storylines, some bigger names and angles into the Cruiserweight division, especially this summer. I think that's interesting because I don't know what it means for 205 Live. I mean, I don't know if anyone, I don't know if anyone really even watches 205 Live anymore. That show does feel slightly redundant at this point. You feel like, again, WWE are only doing that show at this point for content to sell to other streaming services, eventually maybe, when they try to sell the company or they tried to sell or a new licensing deal to another streaming service. Time will only tell when it comes to that. But I think it's interesting that NXT are putting a renewed focus on the Cruiserweight division. I don't want to say that NXT is copying Impact Wrestling or anything like that because people will openly mock you for that. But it's interesting that at the same time a story comes out about Impact focusing on the X division to elevate that title, suddenly you hear stories about NXT trying to elevate the Cruiserweight division. Now, if what Fightful is reporting is accurate there, that the focus when it comes to the Diamond Mine has been planned for a long time, then maybe you could say it even predates Impact's renewed push on the X division. Time will only tell. It's smart. It's a smart move by NXT to focus on the X division. You have to look at unique selling points of brands. How is NXT different to Raw or SmackDown? It's got the Cruiserweight Championship. Focus on that. Focus on that. The Cruiserweight division, this is what always frustrates me. This is why I liked Kyle O'Reilly being involved last night for the Cruiserweight Championship. If you can qualify for the championship, why not? So often in WWE history, the Cruiserweight Championship has been seen as a step down. You're the Cruiserweight Champion, you can't be involved in anything else. There's this complete degree of separation. Santos Escobar, he was the Cruiserweight Champion. I'm only competing in the Cruiserweight division. I'm not competing for anything else. He loses the Cruiserweight Championship. Now he's competing for the North American Championship. Now he's doing other stuff. Why can't you do both? Why can't you do both? I know people will say, well, this is an MMA gimmick, and if you're competing in, say, the light heavyweight division, you'll just compete in the light heavyweight division. Weight can fluctuate. You can go in and out of it. Why can't Roderick Strong be the Cruiserweight Champion and then compete for the North American Championship, right? He won the North American Championship before. Why can't he do both? Have some of the bigger names because, frankly, on the NXT brand, there are plenty of names that could qualify as being under 205 Live, like an Adam Cole. If you really want to push that Cruiserweight division, have Adam Cole go after the Cruiserweight Championship. Have Finn Balor go after the Cruiserweight Championship. They fall in that division. If you want to get the title over, put it on big names. Have big names competing for it. Someone like Finn Balor, what's he doing now? Not a lot. Not a lot. After losing to Karrion Kross again, he's doing nothing. Why not go after the Cruiserweight Championship? It'll give him something to do. If he's not going to go to the main roster, have him challenge for that Cruiserweight title. And it certainly would make great matches and it make the Cruiserweight Championship feel like it means something on NXT television. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Speaking of NXT, next week we have some matches announced for the Go Home edition of NXT before the Great American Bash. Next week's NXT show will feature a #1 contenders triple threat tag team match to determine the next challengers for the NXT Tag Team Champions Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. The three teams are Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon, Io Shirai and Zoe Stark, and Dakota Kai and NXT Women's Champion Raquel Gonzalez. Of course, the winning team from the triple threat match will advance to the Great American Bash and challenge LeRae and Hartwell for the championships. I could see Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai winning that one and then winning the titles at the Great American Bash. I think we might have a title change at the Great American Bash. I really do. A mixed tag team match has also been announced for next week's NXT show. Mercedes Martinez and Jake Atlas will face Xia Li and Boa. So that whole feud with Xia Li and Mercedes Martinez doesn't look to have finished just yet, which is interesting. A new title match has been revealed for the Great American Bash. WWE has announced that MSK will defend their NXT Tag Team Championships against Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa at the Great American Bash. This one's interesting. I really could see a title change again here. I think Ciampa and Thatcher are money. Although you could argue MSK, it's still early on. It's still early on in their title reign, so time will tell with that one. But I'm a real big fan of the Thatcher and Ciampa tag team. I thought their Tornado tag team match against the Grizzled Young Veterans last week was just fantastic. That was a takeover match. It really was a takeover match. So I'm excited for that one. The Great American Bash is certainly going to be a great show. I'm excited to see it. Speaking of NXT, we have some just great news about Toni Storm. Earlier yesterday, WWE NXT star Toni Storm took over WWE NXT's Instagram account as part of NXT honoring Pride Month. During the takeover, Storm took the opportunity to talk about why she agreed to participate and officially came out as bisexual. This is what Storm had to say, quote, "So when it was announced that I would be taking over Instagram for Pride Month, I noticed a lot of people would like, Toni, are you just an ally? Are you in the community? What's going on here? Well, I guess now is a good time to say both. I'm an ally, and I cannot exactly say that I'm straight. I'm bi, and it feels good to say. And it's something I've been really comfortable with for a long time. I just never really expressed it. I don't know. I just never really found the right time. And it's Pride Month, and I'm on your Instagram, so now's a good time, I guess." So, awesome news. Awesome news. I mean, the point that we're still at the point where you have to, inform people, and, it's still a big deal about all this kind of stuff is still indication that there's progress to go. But, like I said on Twitter, on social media, it's early love. So you go, Toni Storm. It's still, even in this day and age, still incredibly courageous, and you have to put yourself out there. And I credit her massively. So excellent news for Toni Storm. We have some update when it comes to the Raw ratings. And it's quite surprising, actually, because Monday's live post-Hell in a Cell edition of Monday Night Raw featuring Money in the Bank qualifying matches plus a Hell in a Cell main event between WWE Champion Bobby Lashley and Xavier Woods drew an average of 1.719 million viewers on the USA Network, according to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. This is down 1.3% from last week's 1.742 million viewers for the Go Home edition of Raw. This week's Raw drew a 0.49 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic. This is essentially even with last week's 0.49 rating for the Go Home show. Now, Monday's Raw episode was down 10.6% rather from the same week in 2020, while the key demo rating was down 7.6% from the same week in 2020 as well. So it's surprising. I mean, logic would think, right? Monday night's edition of Raw was arguably the best episode of Raw probably all year. Certainly the best episode in a real long time, and that show is still flawed. That show is still absolutely flawed. It is still 3 hours long. There were still multiple points of that show where I went, that doesn't make sense, or multiple finishes or creative, whether it was roll-ups, whether it was new gimmicks, Nikki Cross, whether it was whatever, that had you scratching your head going, I don't know what they're doing there. I don't get what they're doing there. That is just bizarre. But Monday's episode of Raw, and I guess this is how low the bar is at this point, is that it was a good show. It was pretty enjoyable. It was fairly enjoyable. But to have arguably one of their best episode of the year, Money in the Bank qualifiers, which people like, a Hell in a Cell main event, for the ratings or the viewership to go down, I think that's when you have to step into promotion. And that just promoting something on Twitter the day of the show or 24 hours before the show, that isn't enough anymore. That isn't enough. I know people don't like things necessarily being announced ahead of time. I know people don't like, if it was announced on social media that they were doing a Hell in a Cell main event, people would probably be angry. to be honest, at that. They would say, why are you announcing everything ahead of time? There's no surprises, there's no all that kind of stuff anymore. But it kind of, this reaffirms WWE's point, isn't it? That they have to almost announce these things ahead of time because otherwise no one watches. The reason, of course, no one watches is because we've been conditioned over time to think that nothing happens. So you don't tune into Monday Night Raw for the spontaneity of it all because you know there is none. So when there is, you're surprised, but the numbers go down anyway because you're like, oh, I didn't watch. Maybe I should next week. So we'll see if next week the ratings go up because people think, oh, last week some stuff happened. Maybe it will happen next week. You have to win fans over. And this is the problem. When you do bad shows for such a long period of time, when you do a good show, it doesn't really count for anything because people aren't watching at that point anyway. You know, if they'd have announced this 7 days ahead of time, not that they would have been able to because Hell in a Cell was Sunday, but if they'd announced it ahead of time, they were having a Hell in a Cell main event, Lord knows people would have tuned in, but it's the same for SmackDown on Friday. It's the same thing that happened with SmackDown on Friday with that. Speaking of the Hell in a Cell matches that have been happening on free TV over the course of the last 7 days, WWE reportedly held the Hell in a Cell matches on Raw and SmackDown as a way to give their TV partners something extra and grab fans' attention as the Thunderdome era comes to an end. Now, in an update, PW Insider has reported that the main reasons for Hell in a Cell matches being held on Raw or SmackDown on free TV was to give Fox and the USA Network something extra. WWE also wanted to try and grab the fans' attention as the company builds to the return of live crowds next month. Now, I think that's fascinating. Whilst they can say it's about grabbing fans' attention, blah, 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 I really focus on the first part of that, and I focus on the reports of NBC Universal, USA Network, but NBC Universal being unhappy that a Hell in a Cell match was moved from the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view to Fox on SmackDown, because again, you have to look at all of the politics of this. So that Roman Reigns Rey Mysterio match was going to happen on Peacock. That's owned by NBC Universal, which owns the USA Network. They thought they were getting that match. They paid for that match in terms of their billion-dollar licensing fee. WWE decided to move that match from Peacock to Fox. They weren't happy with that. In addition to not being happy with it being moved to another network, they went, wait a minute. Not only was it moved from Peacock, but also we didn't get a Hell in a Cell match on Raw. What's going on there? We're paying more money than Fox because we're paying for the Peacock streaming service to license the network, but we're also paying for Monday Night Raw. We're paying, nearly $2 billion, over $2 billion. And they get the match and they're paying $1 billion. That's not really fair. That's not right. And then WWE goes, no, don't worry. We're going to give you your own Hell in a Cell match on Monday. So I think it's more that than, while we're trying to get people's attention with crowds and all this kind of stuff. No, you were trying to keep your television partners happy because they weren't happy. They were PO'd, and I guess they were right to be. They're paying a lot of money, and they didn't get what Fox were getting. And it's going to be interesting if that sets a precedent going forward, because maybe USA Network realize, oh man, we just have to throw our toys out the pram to get what we want. Certainly could be an indication. Finally, Kevin Owens, he recently tweeted that he needed a little break after his loss to Sami Zayn at Hell in a Cell this past Sunday. While on the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer radio show, Dave Meltzer has noted that Kevin Owens would indeed be taking some time off. However, it was noted that Owens' absence is for storyline reasons as opposed to being injured. Now, that's certainly interesting. Storyline reasons indicates that there is maybe something changing about Kevin Owens. So maybe he comes back as a heel. Certainly doesn't hope he comes back with any gimmick changes. I don't know. Maybe he's just taking some time off because he needs some time away from Sami Zayn. I don't know. But certainly, apparently, it's going to be for storyline reasons. So what those storyline reasons are, time will only tell. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.